Live now. Okay. Welcome everybody. It is a Saturday morning and I'm so happy to welcome you to this space. I wanted to just do a bit of housekeeping before turning it over to our host for the day. My name is Rula. I will come back on in a bit, but this is the Zoom housekeeping for accessibility. I want you to know you can turn on captions so that you can read what people are saying as well. By clicking, if you look at the bottom of your Zoom screen, if you hover over there with your mouse, there is a little square icon that has the letters CC for closed captions. If you don't have it like showing up right away, then click the three dots on the right of that bar that say more, and you'll be able to choose captions. And in addition, if you'd like to have your captions translated into another language, and I'm sorry, I can't translate what I'm saying right now, but if you'd like to have them translated into another language of your choice, I will put the instructions for how to do that in the chat, but it's that similar button for the closed captioning. Right next to it, there's an arrow with options, and you can choose one of 12 languages. So I'm going to turn it over to our host. R.L. Marie is a Black and queer poet, essayist, and cultural strategist surviving state violence. They are the author of Gumbo Yaya, a 2022 Movement Journalism Fellow with Scalawag Magazine, and the Georgia Author of the Year. Their work has been featured in American Poetry Review, Teen Vogue, and The Guardian. Ariel writes and organizes to shift the world around sex, systems, and the South from a Black feminist lens. I am personally really excited to have a fellow organizer and writer here with us today that many of you already know. Ariel, it's yours.
Thank you so much for that, Rula, and good morning, everyone. I'm so glad that all of you all are with us out there in the cyberspace. Today is such a wonderful day to be talking about reproductive freedom in Georgia. Like Rula said, my name is Ariel Marie. I'm a Georgia native, an Atlanta girl from day one, and so this matter is close to my heart. I know that Georgians need and deserve reproductive freedom, and that much hasn't changed, which is probably why you're in the room. The abortion access crisis touches all of us now, but even before Roe's overturn, Georgians have known what it's like to live without access to abortion rights. That's because everyday inequalities and a plethora, of state laws stood in the way for years, and that is still true today. So we know that true justice has always demanded more than paper rights, more than Roe, and it's up to our legislators and our communities to meet that need with worthy policies and action. And to make it a little bit more personal, I am someone who's received an abortion in the state of Georgia. When I was a young person, I needed access to reproductive freedom to make informed and true embodied choices for what I wanted, how I wanted to live my life, and what I wanted to do. And it was because of access to quality abortion care and because of access to community that I was able to receive those things. And so it's important for all of us to think critically about who is deserving. All of us are deserving, right, of reproductive freedom, and how we encapsulate that, how we protect that, and ensure it for all of the generations going forward. Now, I want to briefly say what I need to say and then get out of the way, because there are a lot of people here with a lot of knowledge, insight, and who are bringing a lot of power into the room, and I want to make sure that you all have a chance to meet them as we move throughout the itinerary for the day. You're going to have a chance to ask questions to legislators. You're going to have a chance to gain knowledge and key information about what it looks like to protect the right to reproductive freedom in Georgia. And you're going to get a chance to have face-to-face interactions with your legislators and the communities, the community organizations that have boots on the ground in your neighborhoods, so that you know who to go to and who to support and who to lean on in this fight in the future, because it's not just about today, it's about every day moving forward, what we're doing to make sure that we are gathered together and making sure that legislators know exactly what is at stake and what they need to be doing, right? So without further ado, I'm going to open up the floor. I'm going to invite up Ikwoma Okwaro, Asha Starks, Kristen Baker, Alicia Stallworth, and Rula. Come on back to the stage, please, because they're going to introduce their organizations. Hey everyone. So I guess we'll start with ARC Southeast. So Ukoma, if you could take it away, introduce yourself.
I'm so sorry. Can I pass it to someone else? Our router just fell.
Absolutely. Thank you for letting us
Thank you.
know. Asha starts with Spark. Why don't you take it away?
Hey y'all, my name is Asha Starks. My pronouns are she, hers. I'm the community organizer for Spark Reproductive Justice Now. We serve as an entry point and leadership pipeline for new social justice leaders and a political home for Black women and young people. And we center Black queer women, trans folks, and folks living outside of the gender binary. We utilize arts, culture, and media to build resources for and shift narratives about our community. Spark engages in power building through grassroots organizing, advocacy, knowledge building, and political development of our base and members in Georgia and across the US South. Thank you.
And an extra special whoop whoop for Spark for doing the critical work. Kristen Baker, come and tell us about Feminist Women's Health Clinic, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kristen Baker. My pronouns are she, they. I'm the grassroots organizing coordinator at Feminist Women's Health. We are an abortion clinic based in Atlanta, and I've provided compassionate abortion care to anyone who needs it without judgment in Georgia since 1976. We are also the only nonprofit who is we're locally based in Georgia that directly provides reproductive health services, but we also are protecting reproductive rights and promoting reproductive justice through organizing and advocacy. And I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
We're so happy. We're so happy. We're so happy that Feminist is here. Thank you so much for being here. Alicia, we'd love to hear more about your organization.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alicia Stallworth. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Southeast Campaigns Director for NARAL Pro-Choice America. I think the easiest way to remember our organization is that we tend to say we don't operate or litigate, we organize and mobilize. So that's an easy way to remember our organization. But here in NARAL, we are harnessing the power of our 83,000 member base here in Georgia to fight back for reproductive freedom. We work hard to elect reproductive freedom champions like those you'll see at the roundtable today, and turning out in support of legislation that protects and expands reproductive freedom, as well as turning out against legislation that harms us all. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you, Alicia. Oh, Chris, I'm going to remember that from now on about NARAL. I'm going to welcome a familiar face back. Rula, would you like to tell us more about your organization, please?
Of course. Amplify Georgia is actually Amplify Georgia Collaborative. We're a collaborative of 7 reproductive health, rights, and justice organizations and allies who serve as core partners, as well as other allies and collaborators in our campaigns. Our campaigns are designed to be vision forward, proactive. We know that there is always a lot of work to do to push back against the things that are unraveling here, to make sure that they unravel less here in Georgia. And at the same time, we've got to continue weaving, raveling, building for much better than the status quo. And so the collaborative was formed by these organizations that were already established because we needed to protect space to organize in that direction as well. We want all Georgians to access safe and affordable and dignified abortion care when they need it. And to defend our rights, we felt that we have to fight for change at the state and the local level. So you may have heard about municipal work that we do as well with our partners. I guess the last thing I want to say is that it's very important to us that we are based in a reproductive justice framework, even though we hold a central focus on expanding abortion access in Georgia. We will probably talk more about that as we get on into the program. Thank you all for being here.
I'm just so stoked about how much power is in this room and how many folks that are here have been boots on the grounds, fingers on the keyboard, and championing in our communities, trying to fight for access to reproductive freedom for folks in Georgia and in the South and even beyond, right? Because when I was a community organizer, we used to say, as the South goes, so goes the nation. So you know what, defending and protecting reproductive choice in the South makes it a more freer nation, right? So it's critical that we are one of those battleground places. I am going to kick it back over to Ikwoma if you are still with us.
Yes, I am still here. Sorry about that, y'all. A tree fell on our
It's
internet
okay.
connection.
It's all right. World cute, but
But
you know, things happen.
I am going to introduce myself, and I should be able to hop back on video in literally just a moment. And all the notifications are coming back in, so I must have internet again. My name is Ukwome Ukairo. I am the caller engagement coordinator at Access Reproductive Care Southeast, which is the only abortion fund here in Georgia and a member fund of the National Network of Abortion Funds. And we not only serve Georgians, but 5 other states. So Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Mississippi, South Carolina, and Tennessee. And outside of our work as an abortion fund, sending money to the clinic, making sure that folks get to the care that they need, we have a reproductive justice organizing arm, which is where we are a member of the Amplify Georgia Collaborative. And just like a shameless plug, because I really am proud of the work that we did last year when Roe fell. Half of our region, abortion was made completely illegal, and we still were able to send almost $1 million in funds to clinics last year. And so still doing really, really great work, and still really proud of how we approach the work.
Recording in progress.
Ukwome, thank you for introducing your organization. And y'all, I'm gonna just say now, tech does what it does, but we are here, we are gathered, and we're 2 more gathered. You know what? The movement keep on moving. So I would invite all of our audience members and our speakers, if any sort of tech things happen, we will keep the ball rolling. If there's one thing I know how to do, it is talk and make something interesting for a long amount of time. So just drop me a line if you need a second, and I will banter. So don't worry.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Sorry about that, y'all.
Absolutely. It's all good. Thank you for being here. Okay, so we are inviting any legislators in the room who'd like to come up and introduce themselves, who'd like to say a hey, hi, hello to the community in the space. We would love for you to come up and talk about why you have gathered with us at this roundtable and why reproductive justice matters to your district, what the stakes are for you, just so that we can be all on one accord. So if there's any legislators in the room, we'd love for you to introduce yourselves and say hi.
I see 1 hand is up. I see 2, 3, 4 hands are up. Okay, great. So to those representatives and senators who are in the room, we're going to click allow to talk, which, you know, that sounds a little like we're in control, but for the purposes of this Zoom, we get to be, we are going to bring you off mute if you have raised your hand. If you don't know where that is, use the raise hand feature at the bottom of your Zoom buttons. All right, let's see. I will go in order I'm seeing them. Here we go. Allowed to talk. And sorry, I don't think you need to be a panelist. Oh, I may have accidentally sent them to the panelist, but that makes them have a lag. I'm just going to do allowed to talk.
Hi there, I'm unmuted.
Go ahead.
Hi, I don't know if you can see me. I don't think that you can, but I am Georgia State Representative Karen Lupton, House District 83, which is Chamblee and Brookhaven, for those of you who don't know. Reproductive freedom is very important in my district, as it is in every district. And I want to say, when I was knocking doors to run for this seat this summer, I was absolutely shocked by how many men I met at doors. And when I asked them what their biggest issue was, they said women's reproductive freedom. I was really encouraged by the fact that I not only got that from women, I got that from many progressive men who see what's happening to women in this state and want to help. We are not, we're fighting an uphill battle, but we are ready to do it. Mitigate, as Rula said, kind of mitigate the bad stuff and stand in the way of even worse. I have an 18-year-old daughter. She is at Kennesaw State University, and the chancellor, Chancellor Sonny Perdue, said at the budget hearings this past week, wow, people are leaving Georgia to go to college. This is unbelievable. And I don't understand why some men don't realize that these restrictive policies that don't give women bodily freedom have an impact on who chooses to stay in this state, who can live with freedom in this state. It has an impact on who lives here. So I hope that we can work to get that message across at the very least. That if you want people to live in Georgia, if you want people to come and work at this quote unquote #1 state for business, if you want people to work, you need to make it livable here. And that's all I have to say about that.
Amen to that. Representative Karen, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for bringing those stories with you, not just the data, not just the numbers, but the stories are at the heart of all movements. And we appreciate you for being here. And we are excited to talk with you a little bit more at the roundtable later.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I think I see Senator, where'd it go? Senator Sally Harrell.
Hi, good morning. It's Harold, like rhymes with
Harold.
Errol.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Good morning.
That's fine. Hi, good morning. I'm Senator Sally Harrell, and I represent Senate District 40. And Representative Lupton's district, a large part of it is in my district. So when she's talking about knocking doors, I've knocked some of the same doors and heard the same stories. In fact, I distinctly remember talking to a woman who had not voted for a long time because she didn't really want to vote for Republicans, but she didn't really want to vote for Democrats either. So she had stayed home. And when we really got down to the nuts and bolts of what was bothering her, it was abortion because she was Catholic. And what she finally said to us is that she just wanted to maintain the status quo. In other words, she wanted to keep Roe protections in place. She didn't want the bans to be any more extreme. And we told her that if she voted for Republicans, that's what she would get, and that's what she has gotten. House Bill 481 passed in my very first session in the Senate, so it was a eye-opening experience. I'm really proud of how the Senate women stood up to fight against that bill, even though we knew we didn't have the votes. We were loud anyway. And that's what I say to my constituents. And my constituents sent me here and they expect me to be loud on this issue. And I tell them all the time, we have to continue being loud. And so I want to model that to them. I have the title Senator in front of my name. And so therefore that gives me a nice little megaphone, and I intend to use it. So I'm here to listen. I do have to leave at noon, but I want to listen and look forward to working with you as we go out there and get loud.
Thank you so much, Senator. We look forward to being a partner with you and fighting for reproductive freedom in Georgia. We appreciate you for being here. I see Representative Amari Crawford, if you are still here and ready to speak. Okay, we'll circle back to Representative Crawford.
Can you hear me?
There you go. Yep.
All right. Sorry, I don't understand what happened. Technical difficulties. Thank you.
Good morning, Smart Academy faculty and staff. Thank you, scholars.
Can you hear me? I'm sorry. I'm at an elementary school.
That's okay, Representative. Do you want to circle back?
Yes, please.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Come up with a routine for you so that you can store your cyber logs. Please make sure that you take us down and put
Okay, on the list, and I'll just go in order of the elected officials I see with their hand raised. We'll come back to Representative Omari Crawford. Representative Shay Roberts, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Shay Roberts, and I represent District 52, which includes parts of Sandy Springs, and then parts of Dunwoody and Brookhaven. So Senator Harrell overlaps my DeKalb County part. And I think I know a lot of you all, and you know that this particular issue is very important to me. I have my own personal abortion story, which I have shared publicly. I have 2 daughters, and I have said I'll take my last breath fighting to make sure that they have the same rights that I've enjoyed my entire life. And so I look forward to working with you all to advance your vision of the Reproductive Freedom Act, which is, you know, that everyone deserves an abundance of freedom and the right to decide when and if to expand their families and with dignity. So I look forward to working with you all. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you, Representative Roberts, for bringing in the urgency of the matter, right? We're giving it our all. We're giving it to our last breath, like you said, so that folks have the choice, have the access to choice with, I love that you said dignity, because that is absolutely what everyone deserves when making reproductive choices. So thank you for being here. We have Representative Imani Barnes here as well, and then we'll circle back to Representative Crawford. If you could make yourself available to speak just after Representative Imani Barnes.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. Excuse my location. I am actually at a DeKalb Democratic strategic planning meeting where this issue has come up and is one of our hot button issues as it is nationwide. My name is Imani Barnes. I am the state representative for House District 86, so DeKalb County. I cover Tucker, Clarkston, Stone Mountain, Decatur, Lithonia, and some of Stonecrest. So very, very diverse district where in all of those little portions of my community, I'm hearing the same thing about reproductive freedom, reproductive rights. For a lot of people that know, and for those who don't know, my background is in science. I'm a scientist, I'm a biomedical research scientist, and I also am writing my dissertation for my degree in public health. And I said that to say that I look at things differently. I look at data, and I analyze things through data and facts and numbers. And the facts are Georgia is one of the highest in maternal mortality, if the highest in the nation. And there are a lot of disparities that are that we deal with as minorities, as women, especially with people making the laws for us. And so I support reproductive freedom. I support your cause. I appreciate this platform. And as a freshman legislator, I am ready to still fight for such a major issue, because it's important for us as women to be able to make choices for that benefit us and improve the quality of life for us, and people who don't have our bodies or our autonomy should not be able to make decisions for us. So thank you for this platform, and I definitely am an advocate for reproductive freedom and reproductive rights. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. And thank you for reminding us about what's on the line when it comes to maternal morbidity and infant mortality when it comes in reproductive realities in Georgia. Okay. Is that, oh, we've got one more. We've got Representative Omari Crawford. Can't forget about Representative Crawford, hanging out with the youngins, the future.
Representative Schofield is here as well.
Oh, perfect. Thank you, Representative Schofield. Representative Crawford, are you available to introduce yourself?
Yes, I can. Can I be heard this time?
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much, and thank you for your patience. Right now, I'm at an elementary school teaching some of our young students multiplication, which has been fun but difficult all at the same time. My background is simple. I'm an attorney. And one of the areas that I concentrated on while in law school was constitutional law. So this topic is near and dear to my heart, and it's very simple. I believe the ability of women to participate equally in their economic and social life is facilitated by their ability to control their reproductive lives, and we shouldn't infringe upon that. One of the biggest topics that I saw and heard as I campaigned was reproductive rights. And so I'm here because I want to continue to advocate for women in reproductive rights. And so thank you for this platform.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. And thank you for making time for this session, this roundtable today. I saw that we have Representative Schofield. Is that correct? I'm sorry, I don't see you up here in the panelists with their hands up, but we'd love to have you come and introduce yourself.
Yes, I hope everyone can hear me and see me. I am State Representative Kim Schofield, representing District 63, which is the South Side. It's Tri-Cities going up to Southeast Atlanta and all the way down to Union City. When repro rights are under attack, what do? No, we don't stand up and fight back. We say, hell no. We're sick and tired of this, and enough is enough. So I've worked with many of you, longstanding relationships. Thank you for being front and center, boots on the ground. You know you have my full support. I mean, as a person who's had an abortion, my daughter's had an abortion, it was our choice. When my parents brought me in this world, they didn't ask the government what they should do. And when I make my decisions out from my body, I didn't ask them what they should do. So why in the world are they in our business when we are not telling men what to do with their stuff? So therefore, we're going to continue to stand strong. And as my colleagues say, be a strong voice. Listen, you guys have the power of the voice. We have the power of the pen. When the two come together, let me tell you how impactful we can be. So we've been going around this mulberry bush long enough. We're not done yet. Don't get tired. Don't get weary. Bring your friends, bring everybody, because it's time that we say and really hold them accountable by saying enough is enough. Let's start attacking men's rights, what they do when they're in the privacy of their own home, okay? So I'll be with you for a while, and then I've got to go to a funeral. So thank you. Thank you, Rula.
Thank you so much, and sorry for your loss. We will see you soon.
Thank you so much, and I should have known a representative from the South Side was going to bring that fire. I should have known you were going to light up that room. She said, well, we're not fighting back. We saying, hell no, we tired. I hear that. Thank you for being here. I see that we have a message coming from Representative Davis, who can't use audio just yet, but we have Amber, I'm so sorry about the last name pronunciation, Amber Kitt.
There you go, girl. Just like Eartha Kitt.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Please send us a message from Representative Davis.
Just posted it. Can everyone see it?
Can you read it for us?
Oh, yes. Okay. This is Representative Viola Davis, and I serve at Georgia House District 87. Thank you for inviting me. I apologize. I'm unable to use my audio at the moment. I look forward to working with everyone on the mission of reproductive freedom.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Amber, and thank you to Representative Davis. We are so glad that you're here, and we're going to hear you and feel you even with that audio off, okay? Perfect.
We have one late breaking person raising their hand. It is Representative Syra Draper.
Well, Representative Simon, you are not late. You right on time because you caught me before we transitioned. So you come on up and introduce yourself.
I'm good. I was in a line at the supermarket and just hoping to get out in time so I could say hello, because I really am excited to be here and I'm part of this conversation. There's probably no more important conversation that we are having right now. So I'm so excited to be with you in this fight. My name is Syra Draper. I'm the representative for House District 90, which is in Atlanta and unincorporated DeKalb County. You know, I come to this really as a mom and as a parent and as a person who's been pregnant and a person who has had to struggle with the question of having an abortion. And these are deeply personal decisions. And it's more than anything, it's about, you know, your humanity. But I also like to think about it in terms of economics, right? Because as a woman who has kids, like it absolutely changes your trajectory with your career and what your options are. And when we live in a state that doesn't fund childcare from infancy and don't have universal pre-K and options for parents, it just really limits what a woman is able to do in this world. And that is fundamentally not fair. So there are so many ways we can attack this issue. And I know we are attacking them from all sides. And again, I'm just really excited to be part of this fight with you. And thank you for everything you're doing.
Thank you so much, Representative J. Bray. You're in my district. Thank you, Representative.
Yay!
Yes, and we are so glad to have you. If that concludes everyone who is introducing themselves and saying hello at this time, we thank our state legislators who are here today. And we also have a message from your colleague at the federal level, Georgia Congresswoman Nikema Williams. And unfortunately, Congresswoman Williams's plans shifted, so she may be able to join us later on. But she sent us some pre-recorded remarks. Wow, let me get my words together. Some pre-recorded remarks. Say that 10 times fast, because she really wanted to make sure that they were included in this earlier part. So if we could have someone, I think Crystal will be helping us on the back end play those remarks for everyone.
Hello, I'm Congresswoman Nikema Williams, and I am so grateful to the Amplify Georgia Collaborative, Feminist Women's Health Center, SisterSong, Women Engage, NARAL Pro-Choice Georgia, ARC Southeast, Spark Reproductive Justice, and the YWCA of Greater Atlanta for convening this roundtable. Many of you know that I've been on the front lines of the fight for reproductive freedom much longer than I've been in Congress. And y'all, I have no plans to back down now. This weekend marks 50 years since the decision in Roe v. Wade that protected abortion in our Constitution. And though last year's disastrous Supreme Court ruling was a brutal assault on our reproductive freedom, for those of us in Georgia and across the South, y'all, this wasn't new. Our freedom to decide has long been on the line. I remember year after year fighting abortion bans in the Georgia General Assembly. Having worked on the front lines for reproductive freedom, I've seen how the protections in Roe v. Wade were insufficient. Last year's Dobbs v. Jackson decision, y'all, it proves it. The most sufficient protection will come when we enshrine reproductive freedom into law at the federal and state levels. On the federal level, I'm proud to be a member of the House Pro-Choice Caucus to make that happen. I co-sponsored the Women's Health Protection Act, which would create new legal protections for the right to provide and access abortion nationwide. Unfortunately, right now we're facing a Republican majority in the House that has made their intentions clear. They're marching towards a national abortion ban. We're seeing a sustained effort to make it harder for people to find and receive the care that they need. The very first week of the 118th Congress, after their chaotic leadership elections were done, extreme MAGA Republicans introduced 2 bills meant to criminalize abortion. To counter those efforts, I've joined with colleagues to say no to criminalization and yes to providing everyone accurate information about the care available to them. Just yesterday, I reintroduced a bill, the HHS Reproductive and Sexual Health Ombuds Act, that would create a role within the Department of Health and Human Services solely focused on getting people clear information about their access to abortion. One of the scariest parts of the fallout from last June's decision was the confusion and the fear that followed. The Supreme Court decision created a chilling effect, and even in places where nothing changed, people weren't sure that they could get the care that they needed. The bottom line is this, y'all. We must meet the sustained attacks on reproductive freedom on offense. While we work to create new legal protections for abortion, we have to think beyond a singular policy being the answer. We must think about addressing criminalization measures, eliminating the confusion around abortion laws, and increasing access to reproductive care. Just like our opponents are trying everything under the sun to erode our reproductive freedoms, we must look at every option to protect it. That is how we think beyond Roe and keep abortion legal, available, and accessible for all.
Thank you so much, Crystal, for bringing us those remarks from Congresswoman Williams. Oh, can everyone see me?
Yes.
Oh, great. Okay, great. So what I want to do is, if you are able, I'd love for everyone to take their left foot and their right foot and put it on the floor, flat-footed if you can, even if you got to shimmy out of some heels to do it. I'd like you to close your eyes, and I'd like you to just take a couple of deep breaths. As a cultural worker and a creative, sometimes I do this, and it's called grounding, and it helps me visualize the goal that I have for myself and what I want to do next, right? And sometimes we ground in the present because we want to have a strong platform to move forward into the future. And sometimes we ground envisioning the future so that we have a strong goal to move toward. So if you need to ground in the stories that you've already heard today and envision the people who are behind all those datas, those zeros and ones, then do that. If you need to ground in your own personal story, do that. If you need to ground in the possibilities, the radical and beautiful possibilities of what a reproductively free future looks like, then do that. Because you're going to hear from a lot of people today. And I know that there's legislators in the room, there's moms in the room, there's parents in the room, there's queer and trans people in the room who are needing access to reproductive choice. There are constituents and playmakers, as we like to call them, in the room. And everyone has a vested interest in moving forward together. So I need you to ground in this moment, because we're going to hear a lot of information. We're going to hear stories, and whatever is useful to you so that you have the fire lit up under that butt to get it moving towards a reproductively free Georgia, then I need you to grasp it and hold on to it. And I need you to visualize it while I introduce this next person. Journalist Becca Andrews is coming to speak with you all, and I will, and then we'll have public health researcher Dr. Anna Newton-Levinson, who's also coming after that in this section. And then we'll get to hear from more community folks after these two amazing folks speak. So I'm going to introduce Becca first, and then you'll hear from her, and then we will introduce Dr. Newton-Levinson. Thank you for grounding with me. Becca Andrews is an investigative journalist with The Reckon News and the author of No Choice, The Destruction of Roe v. Wade and the Fight to Protect a Fundamental American Right. Her work has appeared in Mother Jones, Rolling Stone, The New Republic, Jezebel, among others. I'm really excited to hear, and would you all clap, snap, and stomp with me and welcome Becca Andrews.
Thanks, y'all. It is such an honor to be here. And Ariel, thank you so much for that moment of grounding. I was feeling very nervous being in this room full of people that I have so much love and respect for. So thank you for calming my heart rate down a little bit. Also, just a side note, y'all, if you haven't read Ariel's poetry collection, Gumbo Gaga, do yourself, do a nice thing for yourself today and order it and sit with it and just soak up the beauty, because it is gorgeous and an important piece of art. So I'm going to keep this pretty brief because I think we're running a little bit behind. But I'm Becca Andrews. I wrote a book recently about abortion rights. And with this anniversary coming up, I'm a huge nerd. So I'm thinking a lot about the past and how the past informs the future. So looking back at the Roe versus Wade ruling, it wasn't a perfect ruling, right? And I do think it's important to keep this conversation grounded in the fact that without Roe, people are dying. Without Roe, reproductive freedom is much more limited. So we do understand the cost of what it meant to overturn Roe versus Wade. That said, in talking to activists for his book and in my work as a reproductive justice reporter, it's really been cool to listen to activists and lawmakers think beyond Roe and think about what what a new version of a federal protection to abortion rights could look like. So the limitations of Roe are obvious, right? Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg said long before she became a Supreme Court justice that, sorry, y'all. Suppose the court had not gone on, as it did in Roe, to fashion a regime blanketing the subject, a set of rules that displays virtually every state law then in force. Would there have been this virtually 20-year controversy we witnessed? A less encompassing Roe, one that merely struck down the extreme Texas law and went no further on that day, I believe, might have served to reduce rather than fuel controversy. She went on to say that the decision shut down any potential or ongoing conversation with state lawmakers, fostering resentment and fury. Around the extraordinary decision, a well-organized and vocal right to life movement rallied. And then, of course, we know that shortly after Roe came the Hyde Amendment. So for those of you that don't know, the Hyde Amendment means that federal dollars cannot be used to fund abortion care. That, of course, disproportionately affects low-income women and low-income pregnant people who rely on federal insurance, federally funded insurance, like Medicaid. Henry Hyde, who brought forth that piece of legislation, was really clear about his intentions. He said, "I certainly would like to prevent, if I could legally, anybody having an abortion, a rich woman, a middle-class woman, or a poor woman. Unfortunately, the only vehicle available is the Medicaid bill." This is the very definition of punching down. So we know that people have also died because of the Hyde Amendment, and we know that Roe was largely built on ideals of white feminism. Roe was not, and the abortion rights movement that led to Roe was not intersectional. It wasn't grounded in reproductive justice. It was grounded in abortion as a singular focus and abortion access largely for middle-class white women. That was never, ever enough for this country. It doesn't address all of the needs of everyone who lives here, who deserves reproductive freedom, because as Ariel pointed out earlier, we all deserve reproductive freedom, right? So, you know, in talking to folks, especially over the past 7 months, I've been so heartened to hear just the amount of fury and wisdom from reproductive justice leaders who are devastated by this moment, but also see it as such a key opportunity to build something greater in the future. So those are the folks that are really keeping me going right now. A lot of them are in this room. Also, support abortion funds forever and ever and ever. The end.
Gorgeous words. Thank you so much to Becca Andrews. Thank you for the work that you do and the work that you're continuing to do. I appreciate it. And I will say likewise, if you have not grabbed No Choice, then you need to go ahead and grab it. I'm pretty sure it's at Karis. So go ahead and grab that thing. I figured. And thank you for your words today. I am going to if that concludes your remarks, Becca, I am going to introduce Dr. Newton Levinson. And I hope I'm pronouncing that right, y'all. The pronunciations, please drop me a note in the chat and I'll get it right. I promise. I'm going to introduce Dr. Newton Levinson now. Anna Newton Levinson, MPH, PhD, is a postdoctoral fellow in the Department of Health Policy and Management, a RISE Fellow, and the first Gemma Scholar in the Department of Global Health at Emory University. Their work has focused extensively on research and evaluation related to sexual and reproductive health services and includes prior work with UCSF, CARE, and the CDC. Her work focuses on equitable access to sexual and reproductive health services, mixed methods research, and complex program evaluation. Previously, she directed a 5-year multi-state evaluation of a Planned Parenthood program. aimed at increasing access to family planning and abortion services in the southern United States. Shouts out. Her recent research was on identifying elements that facilitate equitable access to contraceptive services in the Southeast. Her current studies look at telehealth medication abortion in the Southeast and reducing maternal mortality by increasing postpartum care visits. Such critical work by a incredibly important researcher and scholar. Can all of you all clap, stomp, and stamp to invite and welcome Dr. Anna Newton-Levinson up to the stage, please?
Morning, y'all. Thank you for the very kind introduction. I'm going to share my screen because I'm an academic and we all use slides in academia, so apologies, but hopefully it gives you some visuals to follow along today. I think I need screen share privileges, though. While those are coming up, as have been introduced, I'm Anna Newton-Levinson. I'm a researcher at the Center for Reproductive Health in the Southeast, and I'm honored today to be with this group of amazing folks to share just a very quick overview of the evidence base around the implications for restrictive abortion policies in Georgia and the US, with some specific focus on the findings of impacts post-Dobbs and new research we're conducting on implications specifically related to HB 481. I also need to say that though I am a researcher at Emory University, what I present today is my own, and it does not reflect the position of Emory University, but is backed by an incredibly strong evidence base. So we know that from the lived experiences of people and from the literature that restrictive abortion policies do four main things. First, they severely reduce access to abortion care through decreasing provider availability, making it more difficult to get an appointment, increasing travel time, distance, and cost to get care. Second, they directly increase the risk for adverse outcomes, such as maternal mortality, low birth weight, mental health challenges, and economic hardship. Restrictive abortion policies and climates in general have also been shown to impact reproductive health provider workforce capacity. And finally, these policies function as a tool of white supremacy and are clear examples of structural racism and classism, in that they disproportionately affect and devalue the health of Black people and those with fewer years of education. So one example of the impacts of the lack of access to abortion is the Turnaway study. And this study followed 10,000 women for over 10 years, nationally looked at the impacts of being denied a wanted abortion compared to those who received an abortion. And findings from the seminal study indicated that people who were denied a wanted abortion were more likely to self-manage abortion, experience maternal mortality and morbidity, have poorer mental health outcomes, including anxiety and lower satisfaction with life, experience economic hardship lasting years, including living in and raising their children in poverty, and of being trapped in intimate partner violence relationships or situations, and in the long term be more likely to be raising their children alone. Restrictive abortion policy environments also influence the supply side of sexual and reproductive health care. Family planning providers and staff cite restrictive environments create stigma, additional burden and stress for them, which can lead to challenges in recruiting and retaining this critical workforce. Additionally, trainees may not elect to come to states with restrictions in place or stay in after their residency is completed. A study, for example, found that OBGYN residents in Georgia, nearly half of them and 1/3 of certified nurse midwife trainees indicated they were less likely to stay in practice in a state they perceived to have abortion restrictions. And such restrictions will likely exacerbate further workforce capacity in Georgia, which is already facing grave reproductive health workforce shortages. We also know that abortion bans have inequitable impacts on individuals, and that bans are more likely to deny care for people who are identifying as people of color, especially Black or Latinx, people who are living on lower incomes with less education, people who are younger, people who are unemployed, or people who did not realize they were pregnant until later in pregnancy, as well as people living in rural areas. One example of this is findings we shared previously of the impact of the Georgia 22-week ban, which, as a reminder, the study showed that Black patients were more likely to access abortion after 22 weeks in Georgia, but after this 22-week limit was enacted, Black patients experienced a greater and sharper decrease in access to abortion after 22 weeks than white patients. We also know that abortion bans are associated with grievous effects for both mothers and children, including increased maternal mortality. Several studies estimating associations with state-level abortion restrictions prior to the Dobbs ruling have estimated increases in maternal mortality between 2 and 12%. We also know that abortion restrictions have been found to be associated with increases in negative birth outcomes, such as low birth weight, preterm birth, and infant mortality. I wanted to also share some new findings coming out post-Dobbs. We know that abortion bans impact emergent issues in pregnancies, including ectopic pregnancies, miscarriage, and pregnancy loss. Evidence has already documented this in other states. We know it is also happening in Georgia. So for example, a new study from Texas documented management of emergent issues in patients under 22 weeks, which indicated a need for intervention. And these were things such as premature rupture of membranes, preterm labor, preeclampsia. And they documented changes in the standard of care medical practices due to the enactment of 2 policies in Texas. And these increased experiences of maternal morbidity. So before their passage of Senate Bills 8 and 4, women with these conditions were counseled and offered expectant management, a kind of wait and see with no intervention, or induction of labor. After passage of these bills, all patients were managed expectantly, sort of just a wait and see, no medical intervention, until there was an immediate documented threat to maternal life. In these 2 Texas hospitals, state-mandated expectant management of obstetrical complications in the pre-viable period was associated with significant maternal morbidity. As you can see in this figure, most pregnant patients presenting at under 22 weeks with medical indications for delivery experienced significant morbidity, about 57% of patients having a serious maternal morbidity, compared to 33% of patients who elected immediate pregnancy interruption under similar clinical circumstances in other states without this legislation. The Society for Family Planning has also begun to collect data from providers nationally to document the impacts of bans after the Dobbs decision. Initial reporting indicates that within the first month of Dobbs, the number of abortions decreased nationally and drastically in states with bans. In Georgia, for example, abortions decreased by more than half within the first month of the ban compared to a state a month prior to the ban. We know things will likely get worse as more bans roll out. I wanted to also share some very preliminary findings from our work to estimate the impacts of HB 4881 in Georgia. So we used Georgia-induced terminations of pregnancy data from the Department of Public Health, and our team sought to estimate anticipated multi-year effects of the HB 481 bill, which prohibits abortions after the detection of embryonic cardiac activity, on abortion incidents in Georgia, and to examine whether there were inequities by race, age, and socioeconomic status. And our team has found that under this new ban, the vast majority of abortions in Georgia would not meet eligibility requirements under this new law. And further, our estimates indicate that this ban would have inequitable effects, such as those would be worst for Black people seeking abortions, for young people seeking abortions, and people of lower socioeconomic status seeking abortions. More of these findings will be available soon. Building on this work, I also wanted to share extremely preliminary findings. Our colleagues have also been working to estimate the impact of this ban on maternal mortality. And using multiple sources of data from both Georgia and from the CDC, Dr. Mosley and her team have developed estimates of the number of additional maternal deaths we might expect if all abortions 6 weeks or later were outlawed and those pregnancies were carried to term. Preliminary estimates include that there would be a 19 to 35% increase in maternal deaths annually. And nearly all of those additional deaths would likely occur among Black pregnant people who experience 3.3 times higher risk of maternal mortality than their white counterparts in Georgia. So we would expect to see a 33 to 53% increase in maternal deaths among Black pregnant people and an 8% increase in maternal deaths among white pregnant people. I also wanted to share briefly just some additional context to put these findings in for the state of Georgia. So we know that in 2017, there were 2.1 million women of reproductive age. In 2020, a few years later, the latest estimate on the number of abortions performed were 37,533, which is a rate of about 17 abortions per 1,000 women in Georgia. Estimates also indicate that 500,000 low-income women have the potential demand for contraceptive services in this state. And at the same time, there is still a need for expansion of access to contraceptive services in Georgia, with over 500,000 women living in a contraceptive desert without counties that have reasonable access to a full range of contraceptive methods, and 7% without a single health center. Additionally, public health funding for family planning is an essential support to reproductive autonomy, especially in the context that we are in now. And we know that Georgia's Planning for Healthy Babies program provides a key source for low-income women and individuals. But this program appears to be underutilized. Recent evaluation reports show that the percent of eligible women in the state who enrolled in the P4HB program is about 27%. When we consider that maybe only 54% of the population may be in need of family planning services at a particular time, this estimate increases to almost 50%. But still, that's 50% of people who could be using the service who are not, which represents an opportunity for expanding access to care. I only have a few minutes today, so I want to conclude quickly by saying, in the face of these bans, leaders must enact swift protections for abortion at local, state, and federal levels. It's also essential to support access to affordable contraception and emergency contraception. And research indicates that there are several opportunities to better support access in Georgia, including extending right from the start Medicaid to 12 months postpartum, which we've made significant, wonderful progress on, and will help prevent gaps in care and access. Providing a 12-month supply of birth control has been shown to likely reduce gaps as well in access to care. Increasingly, there have been calls to make birth control available over the counter, and supporting pharmacists to provide emergency contraception is also essential. Subsidized family planning programs are also critical for addressing inequities, but the difficulty in navigating systems can mean women do not use them. Both patients and providers have difficulty in understanding these systems and have misunderstandings about eligibility and processes for enrollment. So better education campaigns to improve knowledge and understanding of P4HB and Medicaid coverage are direly needed. Finally, these bans also necessitate harm reduction measures to support people who are now facing forced pregnancy, birth, and parenting. Evidence supports the importance of measures such as expanding Medicaid, private parental leave policies, subsidized childcare, and increased TANF benefits for the well-being of pregnant people and their families. I'm incredibly grateful to have shared just a little bit of the work that we do at the Center for Reproductive Health in the Southeast with you. Please reach out if you have questions or comments. We are always happy to provide information that may be helpful for passing evidence-based legislation.
Thank you so much, Dr. Newton-Levinson, for sharing that key information so that we have some space to ground ourselves in the data and the research that has come out of folks' intentionality around reproductive choice and reproductive freedom in Georgia. And thank you for doing that key work at Emory University right here in the Metro Atlanta area. We are now moving into a panel style share. Don't worry, you're going to hear from some really amazing people who will hang around with us and have more to share in section 2. So I'd love to welcome up to the stage up here Suki, who is a ultrasound technician for many years at abortion clinics around Georgia, Kristen Baker, who's representing the Feminist Women's Health Center, and will be telling us more about her experiences there. Ukwoma Ikaro, who is representing ARC Southeast, Healthline, and Caller experiences, and Dr. Rachel Neal, abortion provider in Georgia. Please, all of you, come up and join us and share with us some remarks on your experiences as in some of the key battleground areas for reproductive access in Georgia.
Ariel, is there an order that you'd like us to go in?
That's a great question. Thank you. As soon as I put on mute, I was like, maybe I should have given them. So why don't we hear from Suki first, and then Kristen, and then Dr. Rachel Neal, and then Ikoma, we can close with you if that's okay.
That's perfect. Thank you.
And if you all don't mind sharing your pronouns as we move through, just so that I can make sure that I am being intentional in how I refer to each of you.
I just want to chime in. I didn't notice that Suki had joined us. She is on her break from clinic, so she came on a little late. She's transitioning to panelist right now. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, you're all good. Thank you, Rilla. So
I'm here now.
Oh,
Sorry.
Hey there.
I'm sorry.
Hey.
Suki, I was just sharing with everyone that you have been an ultrasound tech for many years at Georgia abortion clinics, and we'd love to hear some of your experiences, and we'd love for you to share about how this intersects and correlates with abortion access.
Ever since Dobbs and the fall of Roe, people have been coming into the clinic, and literally when they come into the ultrasound room, holding their breath until I tell them that they can stay or if they have to leave. The trauma that they have to go through the day before coming in, filling out the paperwork to come in to be told, yes, I can stay, no, I cannot. Or even when I tell them that they can stay, you can actually see their brains turning, trying to process what I said for me to say, yes, there is not cardiac activity, or no, there isn't cardiac activity. You can proceed to get your paperwork. A lot of people are, I feel like, having to be forced to get vaginal ultrasounds because the pregnancy is so small that you cannot see sometimes from the top. And it is almost like they feel like they have to because they want to have an abortion, which before the fall of Roe, that wasn't, it didn't have to be that way. But because all of these things are taking place, most of the time folks don't even know that they're pregnant at 6 weeks. Even to know that you've missed a period. One, some folks have irregular periods. Some folks have IUDs or their tubes tied and just don't do pregnancy tests because they don't have cycles, and now are forced to do pregnancy tests once a month or every 28 days or 30 days, however their cycles normally run, which is crazy. There's so many different caveats and barriers for them to obtain access to come into the facility. They come in earlier and earlier now, knowing that they haven't even missed a period because they're so afraid that they will come in and be too far for Georgia guidelines. So it's very traumatic, not just on them, but a lot of the staff, especially for myself being the ultrasound tech and being the first step. So you have to, give some extra love to folks, you know what I'm saying? And just tell them to breathe once they're finished with their ultrasound. So all of these things beforehand, not saying that there weren't issues and things to stop them from getting an abortion in the state of Georgia, but things have just become so much more difficult and take so much more time and effort and energy for folks to get what they want to get done.
Thank you so much for sharing that sobering information with us, Suki. We appreciate the work that you do and the attention that you show your patients, and we appreciate you for sharing that with all of us today. I think it's, it works very well that we're going straight to Kristen Baker, who is representing the Feminist Women's Health Center in Georgia as well. Thank you so much, Suki.
Hey everybody, like Ariel mentioned, my name is Kristen Baker. I work at Feminist Women's Health Center. Just as a caveat, I don't work in the clinic, so this is given to you all secondhand as we had a clinic-wide gathering this past week. So these are some of the things that we talked about. With no doubt, we know the implementation of HB 481 was devastating and enraging. We are going to be as committed to our collective vision as ever. We discussed this past week in a clinic-wide gathering that the impact of the fall of Roe has been different from department to department because everyone interacts with patients and community members in different ways. So the clinic staff has had to adapt to rapid changes, and we're all working as a team to navigate completely uncharted territory. Specifically, it's been really hard to communicate with folks who thought Georgia was like a refuge for abortion access, that it's now more restricted than ever, and they may not be able to receive care at our clinic. Specifically, we've like historically been able to like right off the bat tell people we'll be able to help them, but now we're having to tell people that we will help them in a different way, like giving them information about abortion funds like ARC Southeast so that they can seek care elsewhere out of state. But a lot of those people will not be able to travel out of state. So many people are being forced to carry to term. And without access to care at our clinic or other clinics in Atlanta or where they live, they will be forced to go through what is something that they never expected to, because they thought that they may have access to abortion care. It's especially hard when patients can't go out of state, but they still ask like what their options are, and sometimes they may not have much or any. So it's been really devastating, and there has been a lot of rage, a lot of sadness, a lot of grief. Specifically, one of our abortion providers said they were grieving what they thought they could offer patients, their practice, and what their coworkers were going through. So there's an abundance of grief after so many years, since 1976, of being able to provide abortion with pride. They said it was like a gut punch. And seeing the desperation on people's faces, and maybe some that were lifted after, people who traveled from places like Texas, and were having trouble leaving work at work. So to wrap it up, there is a lot of sense of community at Feminist Women's Health Center. So our team is great at adapting, great at working with each other. We genuinely care about each other, and our leadership is amazing. And we have been planning for this moment, hoping that it wouldn't happen, but we are prepared to continue care as long as we can to the legal limit, like we have been since 1976. There are a couple quotes that I want to share. So despite all of this grief, there's so much energy and desire to create the world we want to see. And something that our executive director, Kwajalein Jackson, said at the end of our meeting was that just because we're able to adapt to this moment, it doesn't mean that what's happening to us is acceptable. So we're still here, and we're going to be here for the foreseeable future.
Love that you all are still here. Love that Feminist is going to be here holding it down. And thank you for relating those remarks to us from the folks who are doing such critical work over at Feminist. We appreciate you all. I would love for Ukoma to join us again and talk with us from the perspective of someone who's doing Healthline support at ARC Southeast.
Hi, everyone. As Ariel mentioned, my name is Ukoma Yukairo, and I am the caller engagement coordinator at Access Reproductive Care Southeast, or ARC Southeast, which is the only abortion fund here in Atlanta, and in the state of Georgia. And outside of Georgia, we serve Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Mississippi, South Carolina, and Tennessee. I share that over and over again just to name that if there's someone you know that needs access to resources that is outside of the state, there's a possibility that we serve residents of their state as well. One shout out to Suki, who was a member of our board and unequivocally one of the biggest parts of abortion access here in Georgia, and just someone I look up to a lot and love a lot and feel really lucky to know. And working at the clinic on a Saturday. I mean, that's fucking it. Like, if we really have to name it, like, is at the clinic, making sure people have access to the care that they need, and really operating in despite of the circumstances that were handed to us, as Kristen named, we prepared for this in every way that you can prepare for the car to hit you. And it still sucks when it hits. And so it has been truly like deprecating, but also life-giving to see how our communities have been able to shift and still care for each other when the legislation failed us. And I work with the Healthline team, but I primarily work on the community organizing side of ARC. And so a lot of that is with Kristen and Rula, but a lot of it is also connecting with our callers after their procedures. And I lead a monthly peer-to-peer support group. And if anyone's interested in joining, let me know. And I'm happy to provide the details on how to join that group. But it's called So Now What? And it's just people come through and they just talk about what their experiences have been since their procedure, what they need, what they're going through. And with the little bit of like soft data that I have collected from running that program, definitely nothing as academic as Anna, but definitely consistent in the way that like I've been able to see the majority of people who come to support group are parents. The majority of people who ask for funding are parents. The majority of people who ask for funding do not have access to insurance. And none of those things were changed or impacted by them having an abortion. And so they were already parents when they came to us. They already didn't have access to the tools that they need. And birthing and being pregnant would have only exacerbated those circumstances, not inherently changed them. And so working at an abortion fund, which I believe is now a more widespread term, but for a long time, I think a lot of people didn't know what those were, has really radicalized and shifted the way that I approach the work. And so what an abortion fund is, and I just want to name it because I do believe that there's probably someone on this roundtable that does not know what it is. What an abortion fund is if I was a pregnant person and I go to the wonderful folks at Feminist Women's Health Center and they say that I owe $500 for my abortion, I could call ARC Southeast and we would contribute as much as we are able to towards that procedure and send it right to the clinic. We would also connect with Feminists to see if they have any knowledge of other clinic sources to find the funding for the procedure. And then outside of that, say I live in East Alabama and I'm traveling to Atlanta and I don't have a ride, we have a network of volunteers that may have the capacity to come get you and take you to Atlanta and bring you back home, or escort you into the clinic, or provide childcare for your kids while you're at the procedure, or if English is not your native language, provide you with a translator, all of those things. And so reproductive justice was birthed out of knowing that reproductive rights and reproductive health care were actually still insufficient in people being able to access the care that they need. Like we had the doctors, the physicians, the techniques, we had like the legislation at a time, but people still could not get there because financially and logistically, the access and the support was not given. And so without those things, we can champion for legislation that is more inclusive to the circumstances of all, but also knowing that if someone cannot get to the clinic, very basically they cannot get to the clinic. And so I'm really, really proud of the work that I am able to do alongside of the phenomenal people that are on this panel. And come hell and high water, ARC is going to fund abortions and build power, as we always have. And I'm really honored to be on team with the people there.
Thank you so much, Ukoma, for breaking that down for us and sharing more about ARC Southeast's work. I really appreciate that, because we can't always assume that everybody in the room has the shared definition, the shared language. So it's always critical for us all to have a shared understanding. So yeah, we appreciate you. We have Dr. Neil, who is here to share more about what it has been like being an abortion provider in Georgia.
Hi, everybody. Like she said, my name is Rachel Neal. For some context, I am an OBGYN. I completed my residency training in Chicago, Illinois, and I am here in Atlanta, Georgia, completing my complex family planning subspecialty training. I've been here for about 1.5 years, and so I've seen a lot of changes in people's access to reproductive health care during my time in Atlanta. And I want to just really underline the fact and sort of highlight what Suki has mentioned about the level and the gravity of the real, tangible, palpable human suffering that the Dobbs decision and Georgia House Bill 481 has produced is indescribable. I cannot even begin to count the number of people that have cried in my office, in my arms, the number of people that have begged on their hands and knees for me to do their procedure when I legally cannot. And the way that this affects you as a person, right? The way that you have to betray your own moral conscience, the way that you have to turn your back on the ethical boundaries by which we practice in order to comply with a law that was ethically fraught from the beginning. The moral injury that causes as a doctor, as a healthcare provider, cannot be understated. The other thing that's just important to know about abortion bans in general, and specifically the ones that are in place in the state of Georgia, is that abortion bans inherently create delays in care, which lead to fewer and fewer people being able to access healthcare. Because even before the Dobbs decision, before House Bill 481 went into effect, Georgia had multiple laws that made it difficult to access comprehensive, timely, and compassionate reproductive health care. For example, we have a 24-hour consent that must be read to somebody in advance of obtaining an abortion. We have restrictions on insurance coverage. We have restrictions like at the hospitals about who and how we can provide care. And all of these things serve to delay people's access to care in ways that worsen their outcomes. Anna had mentioned some of the newer data coming out of Texas and throughout the country about how these delays, how these bans are adversely affecting our patients. And I've seen it firsthand. I work as a complex family planning specialist, and I also work on labor and delivery. I deliver babies, I see people in clinic, and we are less able to help people who are coming in with pregnancy complications that are much more common than you would think. We are not able to offer them their full spectrum of care. And instead, just like Anna was saying, we have to recommend to people who come in with a broken water bag far before fetal viability. We have to just tell them, you need to wait until something happens. You either deliver at home, which is disturbing, right? It is dangerous. We have to wait until they develop an infection, which can lead to the loss of their uterus or their life, right? Or we have to wait until they have catastrophic bleeding that allows us to say they now qualify for an exception under the law that allows us to save their life. And when we practice medicine, the goal of medicine, the goal of our practice is not to see how close to the edge we can push people before we are allowed to bring them back, right? The early intervention, right, has always been our key, our goal. And we're no longer able to offer that to people. While House Bill 481 has some exceptions, they are narrow, they are vague, and they're up to interpretation, depending on how conservative somebody wants to be. And I want to just state that conservative approach is an effort of self-protection, because it is a felony with jail, like real jail time, if we violate this law. But it means that we are sometimes waiting until people prove that they're sick enough. They have to prove that they're ill enough before we can help them in real time. And that sort of betrayal of consciousness, right? That it cannot be overstated how much that hurts you as a person and as a doctor. I'm just going to end it with, like we're saying, like these laws were in place before HB 481, before Dobbs. Roe has always been the floor, and the practice of medicine is complicated, and it is nuanced, and it is hard, and it is challenging, and any abortion restrictions will hurt somebody who desperately needs healthcare, and it will force them into positions where they are like unable to take full control over their lives and themselves. I believe, and I know a lot of people on this call believe, that people are able to, to assess their life circumstances and determine what is best for them. And any restrictions on abortion only serve to take that autonomy away from people. I'm going to end there.
Thank you so much, Rachel, for sharing that with us. We appreciate you for being here. And I, thank you to everyone who shared with us their first person experiences. I know that means a lot. We have data, we have numbers, but sometimes what really gets to the meat and marrow of an issue is those first person stories, the truth telling and the sharing of what it feels like, what the experiential is. So we appreciate all of you. I've just received a word that we have Representative Park Cannon in the room, who has joined us during a stacked day, and we appreciate you for being here. So I hope that we can all take a pause and invite Park Cannon to come and speak with us, to say hello, to share some remarks about this key issue, and yes, we'd love to have you join us. Thank you, Dr. Neal. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Ukwoma and Suki. And we're gonna invite Representative Park Cannon up to the stage.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for having me. And I want to join as a legislator, but also as a person who worked at the Feminist Women's Health Center and actually stopped working there in order to run for office. So it feels very full circle to be with y'all. And I wanted to quickly share what it feels like to be a person who has chosen abortion, a person who has worked at an abortion clinic, and a person who has defended against anti-abortion policy, what it feels like right now and what we need to continue to do our work. So it really feels intense, dramatic, lots of long days. And I know that I share this with the providers and the community advocates because things are rapidly changing with laws going back and forth. But at the end of it all, we are in legislative session for 35 more days. And over those 35 more days that will spread out between now and March 29th, it will be really important that we see your faces, that we hear from you, and that you share with us how limited access has affected your life, so that we have real-time data and facts. I always remind people that legislators need facts, even though some seem to not be driven by science and facts. It is important to have it on the record because these are communications that can then later be pulled into lawsuits or communications that can prove that a constituent reached out about supporting access. I will continue to work hard on this issue. We're looking forward to this week at the Capitol. If you are able to, I'm sure they will be talking about what we'll be doing at the Capitol this week. But our office is always open to you. We've just moved to room 607. If we can ever assist with your support at the Capitol, please reach out to us. Again, Happy Roe Day. We did a resolution for the 49th year last year, and we got 49 legislators to sign. So even though this year we're not able to do that same type of resolution, we are moving forward with a bill, and we look forward to engaging with you at the Capitol. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Representative Park Cannon. We appreciate all the hard work that you're doing, and thank you for joining us today. I know that the weekend is stacked for you. There's 35 days left, like you said, but we appreciate you taking the time out, as with all of our representatives, our Congress folk, and our legislators who are in the building today. So in the interest of sharing stories and talking honestly and transparently about our experiences with abortion, with reproductive choice, I was asked to read a poem, and I know that there's some legislators like, a poem? We're supposed to be here talking about laws. But like I said earlier, it is important to ground in these stories. It's important to ground in the truth of what's at stake so that we can make more free and more vulnerable and more honest conversations, and to model that. I am going to be reading a poem about my own experience with reproductive choice, with abortion access, and my own experience. So I am opening that. I'm taking off my moderator hat. I am putting on my poet hat. I got a couple hats in the closet. So, and then after this, we will be moving into a roundtable with Reverend Ellis Allen, Oscar Starks, Alicia Stallworth, Kristen Baker, and Ruland Abisamra. So those folks, y'all have about 2.5 minutes to get yourselves together for our roundtable. And legislators, you're up next. After that, we want to hear from you how the day is sat in your body and where we go from here. So to move us from what we know and what we've heard and what we know, the data and the information, to talking about where we go from here, I'd like to offer this poem as transition. This poem is called The Blues Reproductive. See my hands, they strong hands. They hold worlds. They break men open with a snap. My hands is strong hands, and I learned this from my mother's mother. She had a pinch that could end a nerve. She could bruise steel with her hands. Somehow, not strong enough to live forever, but she sure did live. I see her in her grave turning over when she hears my mother tell me that she too had an abortion. My mother tells me our strong hands held a small bloody part of her and let it go. My mother's hands checked the time, and it wasn't time yet, and that was that on that. My mother and my grandmother gave me my hands. My mother and my grandmother gave me my timeliness. I am the daughter of the clock. I am the incarnate of the just hour. I am the firstborn my mother tells me she was meant to have. She tells me every morning that I make the difference. I hang tough. I will tell my daughter one day what it felt like to sever. I will tell my child the choice I held to make a way for the right one. I will hand her our inheritance, our punctuality, our strength. I will tell her what it means to be churned in the dirt by loss. I will tell them, my kids, what it is to question everything that is asking to be housed by us. If it ever isn't time, I will love my baby and the empty ache we hold together. My mother taught me how, and now the men have come for my mother. I will teach my youngest and oldest, and then the men will come for me. The men do not know what they do not know. The men's clocks are too late or very early. They think it is time before my grandmother, and my grandmother isn't here to laugh or weep or tell them how wrong they are. When I learned that my hands and my mother's were the same kind of criminal, I wept. And then I rejoiced. Oh, our beautiful kindred strong. We could have had a fate worse than this. I could be the daughter of the mother of regret. I could be myself the mother of too many daughters. My child will ask me why even the words have been outlawed. My child will question what the men did with our birthright to choose what grows and what unroots. From the prison yard, we'll water herbs and collect them. Out of a jail cell, I'll tell my kids to tuck the fruit into her palm. It is impossible to make a birthright illegal, I'll tell her. Do not show the men your hands. Make a tea from these leaves. Draw a bath and warm a coat hanger. Okay. Poetry hat off. Moderator hat back on. I invite you to take another breath, to ground yourselves in the moment. I'm going to wipe a couple tears because I can't never get through that poem without crying, but that's okay. Provocative poems make great laws, I've heard them say. So we are going to invite up a couple of on-the-ground advocates, a couple of folks doing the mighty, mighty work. Reverend L.S. Allen. Hey, L.S., good to see you. Asha Starks, good to see you too. And good to see Alicia Stallworth and Kristen Baker again. And Rula, come on back up. They have some talking points to share, some reflections to share. Specifically, we're asking you all to share about what you see as the needed future for reproductive freedom and abortion access. What I would love to hear from each of you about what your OR's commitment is to that future. Why are y'all in on this? And what you hope, this is your time to speak directly to the legislators who will be following up after you, what you hope elected officials are going to do with what they've learned today and what they know about the need for reproductive freedom. So I would love to hear from some folks we haven't heard from first. So if Reverend L.S. Allen could join us and give us a brief intro of yourself and then talk about some of these questions that we are toggling with today.
Thank you so much, Ariel, and thank you to Amplify Georgia Collaborative for hosting this. And I just want to plug, because when I see you, finally, I got to get my copy signed. And I just want to plug this. I think it's important that we support artists. Artists and students have always led revolution. And so please support Ariel Gumbo Yaya, and congratulations on everything, Ariel. I'm so honored to be here. Thank you, Rula, for the invitation as well. So my name is, again, Leo Shage Allen. I'm an ordained Baptist minister, and I work as the Georgia campaigns manager for Faith in Public Life. At Faith in Public Life, we envision a world and a country in which every person has an experience of their connection, a spiritual connection to the sense of community and belonging, and that their human rights are held sacred, that they are protected, and that every person can thrive. We are leading the fight for faith leaders to advance just policies at every level, at the local municipality, state, and federal level, leveraging our network of over 50,000 faith leaders, and over 2,500 are here in Georgia. One of our key priorities at Faith in Public Life is reproductive health and equity. And we are using reproductive justice as our model and our framework, because that movement and framework has been built by women of color, and we want to continue to advance this intersectional approach to understanding what reproductive freedom really means. So my role at Faith in Public Life is organizing and mobilizing our Georgia clergy across all faith traditions to fight to, number one, end the criminalization of abortion, to expand access to reproductive care, because there is no choice without access. And then to create safe and sustainable communities where every single person in Georgia can thrive, where Christian nationalism and religious extremism are no longer threats to our dignity and our safety. I have a personal commitment to reproductive justice, and I'll try to keep this short. As a trans Baptist minister, I rely every single day on reproductive care. I rely on that access to care. And so when the when the Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization decision came through last summer, I was not surprised, but I did feel a quite visceral fear for myself and for my trans siblings. And I know that not in spite of who we are, but because of who we are, that transgender people are here and continue to be here and continue to rely on that access to reproductive care for our dignity, for our safety, for our well-being, and quite literally for our survival. I also just want to lift up that trans people don't often have spaces to talk about this openly and safely. And oftentimes we are talked about in the media when it comes to reproductive freedom. And so for that matter, folks of faith are often talked about, but there's one particular voice that is heard and one particular narrative that is adopted in media. And so I am here, and Faith in Public Life is here to change that narrative, to counter that narrative, and to say that no, the overwhelming majority of people of faith across all major traditions, including Christians, Muslims, Sikhs, and Jewish folks, stand for access to reproductive care, stand against criminalizing abortion and reproductive care. And I know as a trans person that it is so much bigger than abortion, but right now that is quite literally on the line, and that is what pregnant persons are facing. And as a trans person, there's no other way to put it. Gender care is reproductive justice care, right? Gender justice is reproductive justice. I know that RJ is intersectional. And so I just wanted to lift up a few things again that I depend on, but so many trans folks, including adoption, hysterectomies, vasectomies, pregnancy, abortion, but also economic justice, environmental justice, immigrant justice, how our bodies are treated by a police state in these social systems that are oppressive. As a person of faith who follows the way of Jesus, I am inspired by his role, which I see as a community organizer. And if there's anything else that Jesus was, he was truly an abolitionist. He was truly for tearing down any system that sought to oppress. People of faith, people of no faith are united in this fight. We are building a multi-faith coalition here in Georgia. And I'm so proud to stand alongside Amplify Georgia Collaborative and to do whatever I can in my role as a faith leader and as a trans person to speak up and speak out. What I hope legislators will do, and I'm so glad to see so many representatives and senators from the legislature, is to take the Reproductive Freedom Act seriously. Let's get it. Let's get a hearing. Let's get it out. And so that folks know all across Georgia, particularly in rural and South Georgia, where access is so limited, hospitals are closing, and people are losing hope. We have got to advocate with our muscle, with our might, with our faith and our voice in this fight for reproductive freedom. And so let's get the RFA, let's get legislation that ends criminalization and expands access so that every single person in Georgia can live safely, can thrive, and maintain their bodily autonomy and God-given dignity. Thank you.
Thank you so much for raising us to the call. Thank you. It's so good to share space with you again, Reverend Leo, and I just appreciate all of the work that you do and for what you shared with us. We have Asha Starks coming to us again from representing Asha Starks with Spark, representing us again. Coming to us again. Asha, can you tell us what is your org's commitment to the future of reproductive freedom and abortion access, and what do you hope elected officials are going to do after today?
Yes. Hey y'all, it's me again. Asha Stark, she, hers. I'm the community organizer for Spark Reproductive Justice Now. And so, first, I just want to say, like, as a mother, as an organizer, like, I believe in a just future. I see a day where my lineage will be in absolute disbelief that this roundtable discussion ever had to happen. I see a day where young people are trusted as the experts of their own lives, that no one will be denied care when needing an abortion. And I've had 2 children during this pandemic. And being pregnant in this time of a pandemic and an ever rising maternal mortality rate, that's scary enough. And that was someone who was choosing parenthood. Now, to navigate the pandemic, a rising maternal mortality rate, unwanted pregnancy due to a variety of reasons, and a very restrictive abortion ban. That's just horrifying. But Spark's commitment to this future is we will continue to fight for abortion justice within our state. We know that this abortion ban and all other barriers to abortion services are the most harmful for our marginalized kin, especially those of us who are Black, Brown, Indigenous, immigrants, disabled, low income, queer, trans, gender diverse. Spark will continue to provide any relevant updates as it relates to abortion access within Georgia. And we urge you to directly support your community by donating to local abortion funds. So just like it was said earlier, ARC Southeast, they provide abortion assistance to folks in the South. And I believe that link was dropped earlier. And then if you have any questions about your legal rights surrounding abortion, we urge you to check out the If, When, How Repro Legal Health, Repro Legal Helpline. And then what we hope elected officials are going to do is, since 2005, Georgia politicians have passed 13 medically unnecessary and politically motivated abortion restrictions, including required waiting periods, insurance coverage restrictions, and now a near total abortion ban. Abundant reproductive freedom means stopping these politicians who won't listen to the will of the people. A comprehensive reproductive freedom bill will protect and expand access to abortion care across Georgia and eliminate medically unjustified restrictions that disproportionately impact communities of color and people who are working to make ends meet in Georgia. We must encourage our family, friends, and neighbors to contact their state representatives to pass a reproductive freedom bill. Thank you, Ariel.
Thank you, Asha. And again, thank you for those remarks. And I do have to apologize to all of the, to Alicia, to Kristen, and to Rula. We are going to have to pivot. I know y'all saw what time it is, and you know how these things go, because there's so many stories to be shared, and there's so much urgency in the hour. There's not enough time in one day to talk about all the things that we would want to collectively speak about for reproductive freedom in Georgia and access to abortion care and family planning in Georgia. But we do have some folks that we've been dying to hear from. Legislators, we are asking you to join the stage, to come off of mute, to turn those cameras on, to be seen in the community space so that we can talk with you directly. There are our community members have been asking questions that we love for you to chew on and talk through with us. Our community has offered a call to action, and this is the time for legislators to join us up on the stage. So please, we are inviting you back into the discussion now. Please raise your hand so we can give you that panelist designation so that we can see you and hear you. Come on down. You got 2 Okay. Just gonna go down the list. I'm wondering if Representative Park Cannon is still here, Representative Barnes, Representative Tish Nagisi, Representative Lupton, Representative Esther Panich, Senator Jason Estaves, Representative Rhonda Taylor, I think I just saw Representative Shay Roberts. Yes, I did. Representative Carla Drenner, Kara Bennett, Terry Anulewicz. I know I got that wrong. Representative Becky Evans, among others. Please forgive me for pronunciation. I am but a Southerner, and drop it in the chat and I will get it correct. I promise. But we thank you all for I see Representative Draper is back. Thank you so much for joining us again, and we're so glad to have you all. I'm waiting to get a. Okay, great. And we also are inviting press. If there's any press who are here who have questions, come on off of mute. We'd love to ask. We'll start with your questions and then we'll hear some remarks.
And in the interest of time, since I know some press submitted their questions ahead of time, is it okay if I read some of those?
Rula, you take it away. You go, I follow.
Okay. Let's see. We've got, I'll take this as two different things. In Georgia, if HB 481 does survive the current court challenge, I'm sorry, this is Jill Nolan from the Recorder. If HB 481 does survive the court challenge that's in play right now, what policies should state lawmakers embrace this session to help offset the impacts of that law?
It looks like it's just Representative Draper and I left from the legislature. So I'm happy to jump in. We're obviously hopeful that the Supreme Court will uphold Judge McBurney's decision that the law was void from its inception. The legislature clearly knew that they were adopting a law that was unconstitutional when they did it. And, I've heard mixed reviews on some lawyers believe that the court is annoyed that they're the state's taking up judicial resources, fighting something they knew that was unconstitutional from the beginning. Others are less optimistic. If they do uphold McBurney's decision, then the legislature will be forced to repass 481 or some version of that. And so I'm hoping and praying that that is the thing that happens because, we have 45 new members this session, 25 new Democrats. I wasn't in the legislature when it passed. I didn't start till 2020, but many of my colleagues who were there have said that even Republican women said, don't worry about it. The law will handle it. The legal system will handle it. So I don't know, it only passed by one vote, whether or not they could actually get the votes this time, especially in light of what we've seen nationwide in other states. And so anyway, but what we plan to do in the future is obviously to continue to get in their face every opportunity we have to let them know that that Georgians who support absolute access to all healthcare, including abortion care, are not going away, that we expect our freedom, we deserve our freedom, and that we are going to stay in front of them. And so I can say that at this point, we've been having extensive discussions about the RFA, and I and many of my colleagues in the House will be definitively filing the RFA on Tuesday, and we will be having a press conference on that. I'm hopeful that the Senate will also be joining us. We're very close on a couple of little pieces. And so that will be an opportunity for us to let the Republicans and the governor know we're not going away. And I have some other ideas going beyond that, on how we might continue to keep that going. We're not likely to get a hearing from the Republicans, a committee hearing. I would love to say that we would, but I don't think so. But we have some ideas around what we might be able to do to still get those of you down there who want your voices heard, even if they won't be in the room. We will find ways to have your voices heard. So repeal the 24-hour consent. Yes, ma'am. I'm looking at the chat as I'm going. I don't know if Representative Dreyer has anything to add to that, but Draper, not
No, no.
Dreyer. Oh my gosh. Sorry,
Funny, 'cause
Syra.
I'm in Representative Dreyer's old office, so you must have sensed that. But no, not really. Just that we need to keep this front and center. I don't want to read the tea leaves about what the Georgia Supreme Court is going to do. You know, I did think it was very surprising that when they said they were going to enforce the abortion ban, even though there was the lower court ruling, you know, they had it happen immediately. So they didn't give anybody an opportunity to, you know, people who were in clinics who were scheduled to have abortions that day that were turned around because it went into effect immediately. There wasn't the traditional, you know, 24-hour or, you know, just a short waiting period so that things could transition. So while I don't want to read the tea leaves, I do think that's a interesting sign that the Supreme Court, that's what we got from them. So I think, you know, we have to be ready. We have to be ready no matter what. And number one thing, you know, is just to keep this front and center because women feel passionately about this all across the state. And, you know, we can't let it die down. We can't let people think they're off the hook for this.
Thank you. I have another question from press. Similar, this is the first legislative session in Georgia in a post-Roe world. Officially, the new House Speaker has said he doesn't plan to take up more abortion restrictions this session because of the current court case, but we know there will be a push for more limits. State Representative Charlize Byrd, for one, said Friday she will push for a full ban. Having said all that, how are you all approaching this legislative session? Are you expecting an immediate fight over abortion access? I think y'all answered most of this question. Is there anything else you want to add on that?
I don't think I've heard from the leaders in the well, I don't know about the Senate side. It's a whole nother animal over there. But on the House side, leadership, I think, is just going to let the court case play out. I think you're going to hear from some of the more extreme Republicans about bills that they may bring, but I don't anticipate that they're likely to go anywhere unless the court ruled before session was over. So I do think we need to have a plan of action if they have a bill ready and waiting to file. If we got a decision in early March and we're going till March 29th and crossover days March 6th, you know, there could be some squirrely timing there. And so we just need to be prepared.
Thank you. Another one, in December, there was news that the abortion pill will be allowed for purchase in places like CVS and Walgreens. This question is for the advocates. What are your thoughts on the improved access this might bring in Georgia? If there's another advocate coming on screen to speak about that, please do. I am happy to share what we know. You heard this earlier. We have at least 13 restrictions that were passed just since 2005. We have a host of restrictions on who can provide abortion. For example, that 24-hour delay, the current requirement that you have to get an ultrasound to detect fetal cardiac activity before being allowed to have an abortion. It doesn't make it impossible to go to those pharmacies that do choose to go through all of the hoops to become a certified dispenser, which is not something done for any other medications. You know, your pharmacy license allows you to do it. But so if you find a CVS or a Walgreens that would do it, you still have many of the restrictions still in place from Georgia's long history of restricting abortion. That mean, while this may mean in other states that you could talk with your provider, get the prescription, make that happen in your own local neighborhood, that's not going to be the case for the vast majority of Georgians. So it's just another reason that we are talking about, we have to go back and look at the historic layers and layers of restrictions that are making even these attempts, say, from the FDA to follow the science, or attempts from the federal government to protect what can be protected. It makes it still out of reach for so many people in Georgia because of our baseline restrictions. Okay, I think we may have time for one more question. What can people do to get our state policymakers to take action on abortion rights now? Great question. Can we end with that one for this part of the conversation?
Go ahead. Democrats need the majority. So let's flip the House. I mean, you know, we got our short-term goals and our what I consider our medium-term goals, which is flipping the House. And you have the LOL, yeah, but that, I agree with you, but that is the way. You know, we are not going to be able, I don't think we're going to be able to convince enough people on the other side, but a world of possibility opens if we have the leverage of flipping the House. So I think that always has to be integrated into whatever activism is going on. You know, how do we keep our folks in the 50-50 districts safe, and how do we build on our majority in the places that are winnable?
I love the LOL ugh. I mean, if y'all have a magic wand that we can, you know, change the mind of these awful Republicans, oppressive Republicans, then I'll take the magic wand. But Democrats support all of this. And so we don't have a better answer on that one other than we continue to fight. We continue to put things in front of them. We continue to tell them stories, even our own stories. That's why I told my personal story, because when I got elected, I said, I want my colleagues to have to look me in the face and understand that my doctor advised me to have an abortion because I had little kids at home and it was hard on my body and the child wasn't going to survive anyway. And so I want them to have to hear that story and look at me and still pass these, you know, completely undemocratic, unbearable, freedom restricting bills. So, you know, I wish we had a better answer than that, but that has to be part of, in my opinion, your overall goals and approach as well. We will continue to work to advance the global vision of what we want for Georgia, but we also have to have help from all of our allies in accomplishing flipping the House, because that's what's gonna, even if we don't flip it, every seat we get more leverage. Last year, we realized that we had enough votes to stop anything that required a 2/3 vote, and we stopped the Speaker Pro Tem's homestead exemption bill, and we were like, oh wow, we can do this. So we held all of their 2/3 votes hostage until they passed some Democrat bills, but they're not going to pass the extreme ones until that's really, really tight, at least, if not flipped. So that's just kind of where we are. Sorry.
I think 4 to 6 years is a reasonable timeline.
I agree.
And that's a really frustrating thing to say because I know people are dying. But the only thing worse than that would have it be longer. So I think, you know, again, we got to be working on multiple tracks at the same time, the short term, the medium term, but we have to keep them all in mind.
The other thing I would say is if you have folks that live in some of these more areas that are controlled by a Republican, they need to be getting their friends in the faces and bombarding their Republican legislators with letters. And, you know, assuming that it's not going to do any good doesn't mean that they shouldn't still be in their face. So, you know, it's our job to try and help our friends win in these districts, but it's the public's job to make sure their representatives know how many people are opposed to these oppressive laws. So
I know we're kind of running out of time here, but I wanted to mention that we are doing organizing in communities. Specifically, we were in Savannah a couple weeks ago. People are ready and they're fired up to work with us. And this collaborative group is ready to create the future that we deserve in Georgia. We want to reach out to our elected officials and tell them that we want them to be committed to a Reproductive Freedom Act that's going to enshrine rights to comprehensive, timely, compassionate abortion care. for all Georgians. And then we hope that they will back the will of their constituents and all the people in Georgia that support abortion access and join us in our vision for abundance and the future that we deserve and that we can and that we will create, and that we need to believe that we will win. So it doesn't, I mean, the timeline may be long, but this is the long-term vision, and we're not willing to compromise on that vision.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I realize we are short on time, and so I'm going to say that for now, any other questions that you had as reporters, you can be sure to send them, but these are the ones that we lifted up that we received in advance. You have Grace's number if you have received a press release. And so I'm moving it over to Oriel, and we will continue with the closing, I think.
I just want to thank both of the representatives who were able to hang on with us till the end. Thank you, Representative Roberts. Thank you, Representative, oh, it popped away. Thank you, Representative Roberts. Thank you, Representative Draper, not Dreyer. And we appreciate you both for being here. And I want to say, just as one of your constituents, as someone who is daily, my wife is an abortion provider in the state, right? And as someone who has needed the access to the ability to choose in the past, and will, always want to always have the ability to choose in the future, that I appreciate your understanding of the criticality of this, and I trust that you both and your colleagues who joined us today will be leaning on one another and across the aisle to figure out how we can get this done, to try and make that timeline as short as possible, because just like you said, Representative Draper, there are folks dying. And I do want to lift up, I don't know if it got kind of overseen in the chat, but Sukari, who spoke earlier and is kind of on the front lines of this thing, did lift up that ectopic pregnancies are being turned away from hospitals are a real thing, and wanted to let folks know, and we know what that means. We know exactly what that means. So every day is a day to be moving the needle just a bit, and as I'm sure you and all the folks who are in the room right now know. I have been so roused and encouraged, angered and frustrated, sad, and joyful too in this call, and I hope that you all are walking away. Everyone who joined us today is walking away feeling a little bit more fired up, a little bit more charged for the fight that is ahead. Is in the we in the pandemic, and we are we're coming on a somber 50th anniversary of Roe. But there's no one who I'd rather be doing witnessing doing this work, and who I'd no one else who I want to be supporting doing this work. I really appreciate Amplify GA Collaborative and everyone, all of the reproductive justice orgs in the collective for lifting this up today, for the journalists who joined, for the academics who shared their knowledge, for the folks who have got their boots on the ground, for the curious people who are on the fence, who didn't show their face or say a word, but are here trying to figure out what they think and how they believe. We appreciate all of you for joining us today. Thank you so much to everyone who worked on the back end. I think that was Crystal, Aja, Amber, and Allison making it possible. Thank you, Rula, for kind of making all the gears shift and being the oil between those gears. We appreciate all of you. This has been really heartening and encouraging, and in the spirit of that, I will share one more little baby poem. I'm actually going to share an excerpt of that of my book Gumbo Yaya. I think it's really poignant, and I did write this thinking about all of the specifically Black folks in Atlanta and around Georgia who are fighting to be seen and heard and valued. Particularly in the book, I use an X in when I spell out girl, an X instead of an I, just to show that girl is I think an expansive word, and encapsulates anyone who could be dealing with gender oppression. And it's an expansive word to include all the folks under the genderqueer and expansive umbrella. And so here's this little excerpt, and then you've got a call to action, and then that's all, and I will let you go and enjoy your Saturdays, all right? Okay, so this poem is an excerpt from a poem called Pantune for Ayanna Stanley Jones, and not a single hashtag. And the last stanza reads, anyway, the myth is that we die. We are summer offerings, halos like birds on our shoulders. The girls gardenia, and we plant them full of cloves and their mothers. We raise a throne from the concrete like a yard of arms. The girls God kings, the girls a map of good, the girls things worth saving after all. Just look. And so I invite all of you to look and to continue looking and not look away. And in addition to that, you have a call to action that I am here to communicate. Uh-oh, Rula, can't find it. There we are.
Oh, okay.
So I'm lifting up these calls to actions on behalf of Amplify GA Collaborative and all of the orgs who joined us today, Spark, SisterSong, ARC, and all the others who I am not forgetting because your work isn't important, but because I am scatterbrained and we are over time. Legislators, will you support a bill to not repeal not just the most recent ban, but also expand abortion access for Georgians who were left behind before? Will you continue to uplift, as you said, that the Reproductive Freedom Act, and also to the public, contact your legislators and let them know what's important to you today? Will you do that? And then to everyone, the call to action is to sign the statement of support for a reproductive freedom bill in Georgia. The link to that statement of support has just been dropped by Rula in our chat, if I'm correct. Perfect. Everyone, you have your calls to action. It's time to move, y'all. It's time to move. So we thank you all for joining us. We thank you for spending your couple hours with us on a Saturday. I'm Ariel Marie, and it's been a joy to host this in connection with Amplify Georgia Collaborative. And thank you so much again. And I know that there are so many folks around Georgia who thank you for your work. Let's go do some more good. Okay, signing off. Have a good Saturday, everyone.
Thank you so much.